As it's starting to get dark and we're getting toward the curfew, we could hear them saying, get ready, because the dispersal was going to come at curfew. I got with the chief of police and I said, hey, they're going fine. Let's not enforce the curfew. Let's just tell them you're going good and everything's going to be fine, but we're not going to have a hard stop at the curfew. So we heard the people coming up, they're getting ready because they were ready for our dispersal order. And it didn't come. And so then the organizers are like, what's going on? Well, you guys are all fine. Everything's good. I mean, we're not going to arrest anybody. We need to start going home, but we're not going to force you to leave until we have to. It went on for probably about another hour, and then it started getting really close to dark, and the natives were getting restless. And you could tell it was changing. And then a couple of bottles start getting thrown into the police line. And so we gave the dispersal order.
I want to ask you one more question before we get into your sheriffing. What is the most memorable case from your law enforcement career? And it could be as a sheriff, but something maybe that still sticks with you this day that you're proud of or left a significant impact on you.
There's a bunch, and for many different reasons, helping families or experience the sorrow with families, those are very impactful for me. But I was as a sergeant at the Detective Bureau, and we were working on cases involving child molestation on the internet and arresting people that wanted to have sex with kids. And there was a Dateline episode, To Catch a Predator. And in that episode, they did it. They brought all these people in that thought they were having sex with kids, and it was Chris Hansen that interviewed them, and then they left, and they filmed them running down the street and everything else, and there were no cops involved. And so I was kind of like a Dateline junkie, and so were some of my investigators. And so that next team meeting we had, they asked who saw it, and one of them said, man, we need to do that. And so we started looking into big stings, and we started making a bunch of arrests, and Dateline actually reached out to us and asked if we would do a sting, a big one, and have them film it. So I was the first law enforcement agency to be involved with Dateline To Catch a Predator, which is Dateline's #1 series in history. And we put together a big operation. We arrested over a 3-day period. We arrested 51 men.
Excellent.
Came to molest a 12 or a 13-year-old boy or a girl. There were different ones that we had, profiles that we had out there. And that was very eye-opening to me. And I've always cared, as an adult, I've cared about kids, not just as a cop, as an adult. I think kids are my weak spot, and we should be doing everything we can to protect them. And being able to show the world how bad this was back then, I eventually ended up, I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure it was well over 100, helping 100 other agencies start their sting operation.
Wow.
And I even helped England. I helped Scotland Yard do one.
Nice.
And so it was kind of cool, not only being the first to do that, but having it so successful and then bringing to light this problem that we had with the internet and the victimization of our kids that truly has transformed. That was back in 2005 that we did that. And it transformed our county and how the county spent money. We all of a sudden were hiring task force, more employees for these task forces just for computers and just for the internet crimes and things like that. So that was very impactful for me because of what it did for everyone else.
Excellent.
And it certainly, that was kind of a turning point in my career a little bit too, because I was originally told no, and I don't take no well. And I'm okay with reasons, but just not no. And I was told no with no reason. And so I asked again, wrote it up different, asked again, no again. And it eventually, I had the opportunity to tell someone about it, that I was very disappointed that we were not going to do this. And then word got back from the sheriff that he had no idea. No one ever told him about it.
Yeah.
Someone else had said no. And so the sheriff at that time reached out to me and said, I hear you want to do this. It's going to be filmed. It's going to be live. All of these things. And he said, I'm going to let you do it. But if you embarrass me, I'm going to fire you.
Yeah.
And
Well, hey, he gave you the expectations,
he
right?
did. And I said, all right. I said, we're not going to. And it ended up turning out very, very well.
Excellent. That is something to be proud of. The kids just break our hearts, don't they?
They do.
They're so innocent.
Yeah. I have a soft spot. I've said this a couple times, and you get the whole misogynist thing and everything else. But as a man, you can call me whatever you want, but I believe I'm a protector.
Yep.
And it is my role to protect kids and to protect women. And if I have to protect men along the way, and if I can, more power to you. And I certainly will. But I truly do believe that I, as an adult, am supposed to protect kids, and I, as a man, am supposed to protect women.
I'm with you. Badge of honor there. Okay, so you're moving on through your career here, and you decide that you want to be the sheriff. You're going to fulfill that dream of your first day in training.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You're going to get a real plaque that says sheriff.
Yeah. So an interesting story behind it. We had what I've always referred to as a real failed leader in our organization. He had been terminated from us, and then our sheriff resigned to take a different position with the state, and that left a vacant sheriff. And our board of supervisors appointed someone, and they appointed this person that had been fired from us.
Oh, geez.
And it didn't work out well for us. He ended up being the sheriff for 10 years, but it was a very bad time in our department for morale. I mean, it was just, we were no longer a law enforcement agency. We were not allowed to do anything. It was all about maintaining a good appearance, and nothing bad can ever happen. So pursuits were discouraged, no foot pursuits, don't arrest anybody. It was a weird time.
Wow.
And when he became the sheriff, he set out a mission to punish all the people that he believed were associated or aligned with the last administration that had fired him. And I was a newly appointed lieutenant, and he labeled me as one of those people. And so I was, on a whim, I think. It was like, our department's bad, and no one's going to change it. No one's even running against him, and he's running unopposed, and it's like, I'm going to do it. So in 2014, I ran for sheriff, and it was my eye-opening into politics, and it was an ugly sight. I lost big, and I got punished for it. And then some life changes happened with my wife and I. She had some medical issues that she overcame, but it put a real perspective lens on our lives. We need to enjoy the rest of what we have in our lives, and I had decided to retire, and I was going to retire in 2017, October 23rd, 2017. And in June of 2017, the president of my Deputies Association came to me and said, "Hey, we need you to run again." And I said, "No, Robert." I said, I'm not going to run. I've told you for 3 years I'm not running, and I'm retiring. I'm out in October, and it's June. And he's like, "You got to. Nobody's running against him again, and we've got to have you do it." And they were asking me because I was extremely well known as a good leader in our organization, an ethical leader who really cared about his employees. That's what I was known for. And I was going to say no until I got punished again when the executive staff learned that the rumors were that I was going to run again, even though I had been saying no. They took all my responsibility away from me. So I called him back and I said, "Hey, I only got 6 months left before I was retiring anyway. Might as well make it doing this." And so I ran in 2017 and I won.
That's what has always kept me away from being a deputy, is because it's an elected position of a politician that has that control to manipulate his people regardless of their successful abilities. But man, so how did he react when you got elected?
I haven't spoken to him since the day I announced that I was running. So you win in November, you don't take over till January. I was basically a non-member of the department. I was still getting paid, but they didn't allow me to do anything. There was no transition, there was no welcome, it was nothing. I mean, it wasn't until the morning I got sworn in that I was even allowed in the Sheriff's Administration Building. And so I traveled, I took that November to January, 2 months. Every day I just went to one of our other stations. We're a big agency. So I went to one of our stations or one of our bureaus, and I just hung out, talked to them, took pictures with them, and got to know them. If they didn't know me, get them to know me, ask questions. And one of that aspects about what you've said is one of the things that I've been very clear about what we will never be. What happened to me, I mean, I could write a book. Eventually I will write a book, and it'll be a bestseller because it's a made-for-TV drama, my career to get to the sheriff position. And I made it clear to everyone that that will never happen in my agency again. We don't show favoritism. It's based on merit, not
There
who
you go.
you fish with, who you golf with. You work your butt off in this organization, and you are going to get rewarded.
Yep.
It might not be when you want, but it'll be when we have an opening that we can move you into something. It's a merit-based organization, and there is no punishment for making somebody mad or for truly even making a mistake. You make a mistake, you're going to learn from it. If it's a fatal mistake, unfortunately, in our line of work, you've got to be let go. But that doesn't happen here. And I think that's resonated really throughout the country because we are so big, and things that we've done in our agency, we send people all across the country to train other agencies and in various aspects of law enforcement. And so it's a diverse crowd that they're going out there and influencing. And I think that's why one of those things, you mentioned it earlier, I'm very, very humble. I learned very early on. My dad taught me that if you have to tell someone how good you are, you're not that good.
If you think, it's an old country saying, I grew up in the Southeast, if you got to toot your own horn, it's probably not worth tooting.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes it's hard for me to do that. And even in the campaign, you're supposed to go out there and sell yourself. And I would rather just have my actions and my works speak for me. But unfortunately, in this, you can't do it. I think that's how I treat my employees, how I run this organization, the respect that I have for them, knowing that they are more important in this organization than I am. I'm just overseeing it and making sure it goes right. Mm-hmm. But if they're not here one day, I mean, we fail. If I'm not here one day, they just carry on with business. And so I have that organizational structure right, and that, that pyramid, I'm at the bottom. I'm not up at the top. I'm holding up the weight of that pyramid. They know that, and that's resonated with all these. You saw me out front, and a lot of them, when I meet deputies or when I meet other police officers, it's like, man, I wish you were my chief, or I wish you were my sheriff, or I'm considering lateraling over to your agency, and I've got friends that work there, and they just love it. And
what a testament.
It is, and I like that because I don't really think it's me doing it. I think it's just me allowing something that is natural. It's natural for us to want to make things better. And I realize in order to make things better, and I mentioned this morning, you've got to be proactive in law enforcement. You've got to go out there and do the work. And with that, bad things happen sometimes. And just because a bad thing happens doesn't mean you did something wrong. And my deputies know they just do the right thing. They're going to get in accidents sometimes, and there's going to be injuries sometimes. And as long as we're going in that service to others, it's okay.
Yeah. That's called leadership. What that boils down to. People want to do the job. They take the job because they want to serve their fellow man, which in my opinion, there's no higher calling. But as the leader, when you give them the opportunity to do the job and you give them the tools that they need and then get the heck out of the way, it's amazing how people perform.
Yeah, I can't remember who said the saying, and I've said it before and I've quoted him, and now the name just lost me. But it's amazing how many good things can be accomplished when it doesn't matter who gets the credit.
There you go. I love it. So now, being a sheriff now for 7 years?
7 years.
And that just wasn't enough for you, wasn't it? So now you've decided to pursue something else. What is that?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be, I'm a little bit competitive. I will be the next governor of California.
Wow.
And we've got an election coming up in 2026. And fighting for public safety for the last 6.5, 7 years, battling just an agenda in our state capital that is anti-public safety, that is very, very pro-criminal, has just been overwhelming to me. And then noticing in the last 2 years as the prospective candidates start signing up to be a candidate, I realized it's the same names and the same faces of all of the politicians that have put us here to begin with. Over the last couple of decades, it's all the same people. And they are responsible for us being here. And it was like, I got to do something. I'm at the point, as a lieutenant in my organization, I knew that the station that I commanded, that was my limit. That's all I can help, is the deputies below me and the people that we're serving. I can't influence other stations. And so I knew that to make that decision to run for sheriff that's where you make the difference. It has to be that leader that makes the difference down here. And so taking that same mentality and looking at what we have in Sacramento, there is nothing going to change with any of those people getting elected, because it's going to be the same status quo that we've had. And then now that I've announced, there's been several other Republicans that have gotten into the race. And I think we truly are turning in California, where even Democrats are realizing the next governor is going to be a Republican, because we've been Democrat controlled completely for 30 years and everything is bad here. So it's like, okay, it's worth trying it. We're going to vote for Republican because all these policies are killing us now. And so now you've got more Republicans that are getting in the race, but now it's going to just come down to resume. And if you look at resume and you look at character and you look at service to others over 32 years, 8 at the time of the election will be 8 years as the elected sheriff. There will be no one that even comes close to the resume that I have and the capability of actually going into this position and making a difference. The Democrats brought us here, and I hate to talk Democrat Republican, but in California, that's what it is. It is 100% Democrat caused here in California. And so you've got Republicans jumping up saying, oh, I want to be the governor, I can fix it. The reality is, for them, it's personal to them. They're doing it because they want to. And I'm doing it because I feel I have to, because no one else is going to be able to win. A Republican, even though I'm a Republican, but a far right appealing to that right-wing crowd is not going to win in California, who's going to have to get Democrats to vote for them. And a sheriff who runs a nonpartisan race, who represents every single person in his county and has a history of doing that, has that reputation of running government efficiently, running government right, and doing it for others, not for a personal benefit. I'm the only one that's ever going to show up that's like that. And then in California, we're so bad public safety, I think that's a big platform, a big springboard for someone like me to say, look, public safety is completely broken in California, and who better to fix it than
somebody's been doing it for 32 years.
Yeah.
So I'm an outsider. I'm an East Coast guy. I don't live in California, never have. I love visiting out here. I love going back to the East Coast. But when you come out here and visit and you read articles, I read an article here just within the past week that the only people moving into California are immigrants, we're all immigrants to start with, right? I'm English-Irish heritage. So my grandmother immigrated from England when she was a little girl. So I'm not that far away from being an immigrant myself. But how can you see the price of things? You see the issues that they have in California. The rest of the country kind of looks at the West Coast as a different place. And then people want to continue to do the same thing but expect a different outcome. Yeah. Which is the definition of lunacy.
It is. It completely is. And I think that the lure of California, or the lore of California, so it lured me here, but the lore of California is that California dream. It's like we all have the American dream, but man, if you want to make it, you got to go to California. That's what people grew up in. That's what I grew up in. My generation certainly, and maybe even the generation below me. But that's changed in the last 10, 20 years. In that now California is the laughingstock. I mean, other countries know that California is bad and the politics are bad and destroying the state. There are no businesses wanting to relocate to California. All of our businesses are relocating to other states that are more business friendly. You don't come here because you don't want to pay taxes, because we pay the highest taxes in the country.
It's amazing.
You don't come here for a better cost of living, because our cost of living is the highest in the country. You don't come here from another country for your kids to get into a good school district, because our schools are the worst in the country. And this is decades of horrible political agenda mismanagement that is now coming to fruition. And everyone's thinking of leaving. But the problem is you still have that lore of California. Mm-hmm. And then when you get here, there is no other state in the country that has perfect weather year-round. There is no other state in the country where you can snow ski one day and surf the next day in 60, 70-degree different temperature drop or change. And then the next day you can go to the desert and ride your ATVs and do all of those things that you want to do. And, we have hunting, we have fishing, we have any type of outdoor activity you want. Truly, and I'm not saying this just because I'm from California, because I came from a great state of Utah, which it has that same outdoor activities. But the weather is not the same in Utah as it is here. And that's what you have here, the difference in geography, that because we're a long state and a narrow state, the drive from desert to mountain to beach is short. And you can experience that all in the same day. And so that magnet of California is what keeps us here. And we've allowed ourselves to be victimized by our own government with high cost of living, with regulations that drive the cost of everything up, regulations that prevent homes from being built for 4 years, 5 years, and they wonder why we have a housing crisis here. Our gas taxes are, I mean, it's the craziest thing in the world. I mean, we're double the price of gas from other states. Texas, the other day, it was about 3 weeks ago, so I don't know how much it's changed now. I noticed that ours is going up. I don't know if Texas is too, but at the point where I looked, it's $2.40 a gallon in Texas, and I paid $5.80 here. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. And then when you realize that our county, which Kern County, Bakersfield area, which is the central part, the deserty, central east part of our state, they have more oil below them than Texas, and we don't drill it. And so we're the biggest state in the country. We have more drivers than anyone in the country. We use more oil than anyone in the country, and we import 80% of our oil from other states and other countries. It should be embarrassing.
Yeah.
And we wonder why we're paying double for gasoline and everything else. That causes everything else to go up. The cost of goods and services that you're delivering, all of that goes up, and we wonder why our grocery prices are more expensive than everywhere in the country. So truly, the only people coming here now are immigrants, are illegal immigrants that are coming here for free stuff. Because if no one is coming here to say, I'm going to go make a better life for myself in California, because there are far many better states for quality of life issues than California. But where I'm at, it's like I came here for that California dream. I achieved it. I know that it's no longer a dream for my kids. It's just out of reach, and they're looking at it like it's too far gone. And I know that we have to change it to get it back. And I look at it like, I made this my home. I made this my life. Why am I being forced out of it? Am I going to allow myself to be forced out of my home and relocate to another state when all of these things are government imposed and they can be changed in a day? In a day, the majority of the things that cause us difficulty here in California could be reversed with a new governor, with a governor that actually just cared about Californians instead of what we have in Sacramento. It's all about special interests and money.
And that's called being proactive, just as you did when you became sheriff.
Yes.
So there's one sticky point here that I want to ask you about, and I got your permission to ask the question before I posed it to you. When I was doing research on you, we've all seen the defund the police, the Black Lives Matter, all the protests that were going on, and those specific groups wanting government officials to take a knee with them. And I read where you did. And so, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, that gave me pause. But then I talked to some people that know you, and they explained to me what you did. And so what I want to do is, I agree with what you did for the reason you did it. And I would ask that you, if you don't mind, if you could explain that to us. Sure. Why you took a knee that day.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the question and the opportunity to explain it. Not something that I ever thought I would have to explain. Apparently, in an election, everything's going to be twisted around or turned around or come around that you're going to have to answer to. And so I'm going to preface it by two things, and then I'm going to tell you. There's a saying that says, never believe anything that you hear and only believe half of what you see.
True.
And then my current situation in the law enforcement world, I am known as one of the most respected law enforcement leaders in the country, and particularly in the state of California. And you get even closer and you go into my county with not only my deputies, but with all the other municipal police departments and their officers and chiefs and everything else. I am extremely well recognized as a leader of law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And now backwards to BLM. BLM is a domestic terrorist organization that is completely against law enforcement. So those two things don't go together. Mm-hmm. Me supporting BLM doesn't happen. It can't happen. We're kind of mortal enemies because all of the things that they were alleging were untruths, and it was their fight against law enforcement, against standing up against law enforcement. into those riots that began with George Floyd, and cities started burning down. Los Angeles was on fire. We're about an hour and a half inland of Los Angeles, just a different place. Everything that happens bad usually happens in Los Angeles first when these things happen, and then it spreads to the rest of us outside the big city. It happens like that always. It's normally everywhere. And so we had a couple of days notice that it was coming to us. And I wasn't going to let happen what was happening in Los Angeles. We were watching cop cars being overturned and set on fire, and stations being damaged and vandalized, and businesses being looted. It was absolute chaos. It was a true riot. And of course, it's always the peaceful protesters that always end in riots and burning buildings and everything else, but it's the peaceful protesters. And so they come to us, and how those things work is we knew they were coming. Our Board of Supervisors and our city councils had an emergency session, and they all did curfews. So we had, I think it was a 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, that's not important, but we had a curfew set in the evening because we knew that's when it happens, is after dark. And so now the organizers are getting permits and everything else, and so now they're meeting with law enforcement because we need to lay down the parameters of your protest if it's a peaceful protest. And they knew who I was. I knew who they were. They were community organizers. They were community activists, but they weren't bad people. And so one of these aspects of meeting with them is they know who I am. They know that I'm a God-fearing man that prays in public all the time, that is not afraid of pray. And when they left, they were like, hey, you mind if we pray? And so when they left my office, the 2 times that we met, we prayed and they went on their way. So that night, we're at the protest. And mind you, I had 900 deputies there at that riot. We were expecting, they told us to expect around 5,000 to 7,500 protesters, and we had, the estimate was 10,000. And it originally started, it really wasn't my jurisdiction. It was a city jurisdiction, but in that city jurisdiction where they were going to be held was my courthouses, the county admin building, and my sheriff's administration building. So it's me now. And so I found out from the chief that he was going to have roughly about 100 of his officers there. And I'm like, man, that ain't enough. And I made the decision with my agency that we went on emergency operating procedures. All vacations are canceled, everything's canceled, and you're 12 on, 12 off. And so now I have 2,500 people working at one time, all for 24-hour periods.
Right.
We were not going to allow what I saw on TV to happen. So we come into now we're at the protest, and I know this is long, but there's got to be context because all we're seeing online right now and the little snippets in the pictures is what they want you to see.
Right.
Someone wants you to see that. So I've got 900 deputies now, and we're in that downtown area, and there's roughly almost about 150, maybe a little bit more than that, of other officers from the PDs that were around. Highway Patrol sent a whole bunch of people, and because we have a freeway that was a quarter mile, half a mile from where this protest was going to be. And so we're talking between probably 1,000 and 1,200 cops that are right there in that downtown area with 10,000 protesters. It got toward evening. It was fine. I mean, they were brutal. I mean, they were the police and all cops are bastards and all of that stuff that they were doing. It was horrible listening to the things they're saying and everything else. My guys were extremely professional all day long. They just stood there. They took it. There were no negative instances of interaction between us and them all day long. There were protesters that were there that got caught up in the moment that are just down there because it's a protest, and so there were nice ones too. There were thank you for your service and all that while the person next to him's flipping me off and wishing I was dead. And now we're moving into nighttime, and we can feel I'm right there. So I've got 1,000 deputies behind me, 10,000 people in front of me, and I'm in the middle. I wasn't behind on a video watching. I was there talking to them, making sure that my guys were doing what I wanted them to do. We were professional, but all of my guys knew going in, when this went sideways, all bets are off.
Right.
We win this, and we win it quickly, and we win it with overwhelming show of force.
Yep.
And so as it's starting to get dark and we're getting toward the curfew, we could hear them saying, get ready, because the dispersal was going to come at curfew. So I got with the chief of police, we were kind of like a joint command there because it's his city, it's his jurisdiction. And I said, hey, they're going fine. Let's not enforce the curfew. Let's just tell them you're going good and everything's going to be fine, but we're not going to have a hard stop at the curfew. So we heard the people coming up, they're getting ready because they were ready for our dispersal order. And it didn't come. And so then the organizers are like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, you guys are all fine. Everything's good. I mean, we're not going to arrest anybody. We need to start going home and we need to start, but we're not going to force you to leave until we have to. And so it went on for probably about another hour. And then it started getting really close to dark. And the natives were getting restless, and you could tell it was changing. And then a couple of bottles start getting thrown into the police line, and so we gave the dispersal order. And I told the organizers before the order, I said, okay, it's over. As soon as we're done here, we're going to give the order. We're going to give 20 minutes. Anybody not actively leaving is going to be arrested in 20 minutes. And so they're talking, and they were actually telling me where the bad people were. They're like, this is where the rocks are. This is where the bricks are. This is where the weapons are. This is the group that's instigating it. They've got way in the back, they've got tons of industrial grade fireworks. And they're telling me all this stuff. And so I'm like, okay, it's all good. Appreciate you guys' cooperation today. It's all good, but now we're going to do it. And so he tells me, he said, it's great. Thank you for all your guys' help. You guys were amazing. You're a good man, all this stuff. And he said, can we pray? I'm like, of course we can pray. So we start to pray, and he stops, and he said, can other people pray with us? I'm like, yeah, of course. And he's like, your deputies? I'm like, yeah. And so some deputies did. Some deputies said no. And so we start to pray again. And he says, do you mind if we kneel to pray? And I'm like, absolutely not. So we kneel to pray. This is where it goes sideways. And in hindsight, I probably didn't kneel to pray, but I would never say, no, I'm not going to kneel to pray. That's the only thing I kneel to is to pray.
Right.
And so they take off. The cameras now are right there. And now it turns into what it turned into. And the reason why I went into this long diatribe of context of what happened is the 1,000 cops that were there know what happened. And the people that were home sitting on their couch in the safety of their home don't.
Right.
And the perception that the media wanted people to have at that time was that officials were kneeling in solidarity because of the kneel on George Floyd and everything else. I remember the next day seeing it on TV, and I'm like, that sucks. I mean, that's not what happened. And then people reaching out to me and saying, oh, I can't believe that was so awesome that you did that. And it's like, well, I didn't, but I get it. Mm-hmm. Why I did it, I would always do it again. I don't regret how it happened. I wish especially now, because people are wanting people to believe something that didn't happen. But at that time and what I did, being in the middle of that, being engaged with the ones that were going forward with that, I had to do everything I could to not lose a city. I mean, we have Riverside, our downtown area. We have one of the oldest buildings in the state, the Mission Inn. It's a hotel, unbelievably old, beautiful, massive hotel, and it's lined by palm trees. And we knew, it's like, that thing, we're losing. Those palm trees are going up, and it's going to burn, and we're not going to be able to stop it. We knew it was going to happen. And I did everything I could to keep them calm, and they didn't. And praying with them, I mean, that's normal anyway. And they even asked, they're like, we know you're stopping it. We know there's going to be arrests. We know this is probably going to get ugly. Can we pray for everyone's safety? Well, of course we can. And so I would do it again. They leave. We kick the media out. We didn't kick them out. We told them, get out of the way, because it's going to get ugly going this way. And it took us about 40 minutes to get rid of those 10,000 people once it started going violent. I got hit with a screwdriver. Screwdriver was about that long. Luckily, I caught it out of the corner of my eye, just something that was there, and I jumped back and stepped back, and it hit the ground right in front of me and then just bounced up and hit me. I've got bulletproof vest on and everything else, so it just bounced off of me. But had I not seen it, it was a big flathead screwdriver that's coming through the air. I mean, those are the things that were being thrown at us. Industrial fireworks, everything else, but we gave them everything that we had. Pepper ball, bullet, gas, rubber bullets, launchers, everything that we had. And we had no buildings damaged. Not one building in Riverside County during the Summer of Love, not one building in Riverside County was looted. We had no injuries to deputies, and there were no reported injuries to any protesters from that night. And we ended it in 40 minutes. And after that, I set the tone. My agency, our response, that massive, overwhelming response, set the tone for LA to do it the next day. And then theirs was so out of hand, it took them 3 or 4 days before they really got a hold of it and they got it stopped. But everyone else started doing the same thing, and they all ended. The protests all ended. In Riverside County, we have intel that monitors all these groups, them in particular, but all the groups, the Antifas and all those things. No one comes to Riverside County. They don't plan anything in Riverside County because they know we don't allow it. Mm-hmm. We have a zero tolerance for anything like that. Back to the whole BLM thing. Never, ever, ever. Not only would I kneel to BLM and support their cause, it was domestic terrorism. I would not be the leader I am today in law enforcement if those 1,000 deputies and cops didn't know what actually happened there. And then that word spreads. You mentioned that someone told you. I mean, that's really all that matters to me. And in the end, there's been people that confront me and they don't believe me. And I tell them, look, you're either going to believe me or you're going to believe what you saw on the internet. Mm-hmm. And you're the only one that can decide that. In the end, I really don't care what you believe because I know the people that I represent, that I lead, I know what they believe.
Right.
And I know what they know. And that truly is the only thing that matters to me. And it's unfortunate that in this election, that something like that is coming up, which for me, my character, my stance against BLM before that happened, I mean, I was anti-BLM before it came to Riverside, and I was very vocal. Before that, I had become on the national stage being vocal against COVID and against the lockdowns and against all these mandates that were just unconstitutional and wrong. And so I had that platform already. I was already saying all these things. And that's all being ignored for 5 years later now because it's unfortunately in a political season where people want others to believe that I'm not the leader that I say I am, or I don't have the integrity that I say I have. And my campaign really is about the dishonesty of government. And elect a law enforcement leader, we're forced to tell the truth. I mean, that's my day-to-day job. Depends on me telling the truth. And the opposition wants you to believe that I'm not as honest as I say I am, and I'm not the leader that I say I am because they know they can't be.
Yeah. And I can't thank you enough for giving that explanation. I know that's probably not a comfortable thing for you to do, but I challenge our listeners and even my partner Javier and I, when we're doing our keynote speaking business, don't accept what other people tell you, especially the media. Find out what the topic is. We're all intelligent. We can make up our own minds. Do your own research, and then you independently decide. Don't let the media, especially the media, grab you by the nose or the ear and tell you this is what you have to believe.
Yeah.
Use your own brain, do your research, and then you make your own decision. Just like me, I had that knee-jerk reaction when I read that you'd taken the knee. I thought, well, do I want to interview this guy that agreed to take the knee? But then when I find out the real story, it's like, absolutely, I want you on here. And I'm just so happy that you agreed to explain it because that never happens in the media.
Yeah, it doesn't. And honestly, and I know people tell me, even my consultants have said, you need to get a real short answer. And the real short answer, I tell them all the time, it's like, well, if somebody's going to sit and listen to the whole answer, then they need to hear the whole answer because there's context that comes with it. Because the short answer is what I believe is what the media is expecting and what these other politicians are expecting, because then they're going to point to that and saying, oh, he's just lying, because the short answer is, I was praying with them. And then they're going to say, oh, he's making that up. And it's like,
Right.
well, that would be easy for me to make the short answer, but then it's also easier for you to discount the short answer by me trying to cover up for it or something.
Exactly.
And I wish it was something that I didn't have to talk about, because I want to talk about the things that are destroying California.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't that. I mean, I saved Riverside and really Riverside County. And I don't regret it. And other than, I try and live my life without any regrets. I don't ever want to say I have a regret, because you regret something that you did usually, or something that happened. Well, you also grew from that. So if it didn't happen, you learned from it, and then you never know how that's going to benefit from you in the future. And at that time, I was a brand new sheriff. And so I'm now in the national spotlight, fighting against COVID mandates and now these protests and civil unrest and all of that, and trying to figure things out. And it was very eye-opening to me that I believe, and sometimes it's wrong, but I will trust anyone. If I don't know you, I'm going to trust you until you give me a reason not to.
Absolutely.
Once you break that, now it's going to be pretty tough, you gaining that trust back again and those things. But I will always trust in the beginning. And I had to change my belief in that dealing with the media, because up until that point was relatively fair. It wasn't always complete and it wasn't always accurate, but I wasn't an anti-media person. But after that, I realized it's like, man, they have an agenda. And that reporter knew what had just happened. And those people knew what had just happened, but they spun it as something else. And so if that wouldn't have happened, something else in my future, I may have been in worse shape, or some other tragedy or something that wasn't handled well that was spun by the media because I trusted them and got burned.
Right.
And that's never going to happen.
Yep.
So I did grow from that. I still, even those kids that I was dealing with, the organizers of that, I don't hold it against them. I know now in hindsight that I'm sure that was on purpose. I will tell you this, I was very critical of other law enforcement that was kneeling to BLM and kneeling at the time for the national anthem and all of that crap that was going on back then. I was extremely critical. And after that, I never said one negative thing about another chief or sheriff or cop, because it was like, I wonder if that was the same thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if they really did kneel to BLM, because at the time I remember thinking, why would a cop do that? They hate you. I mean, they're not. You can't be one of them. And so I changed my opinion a little bit. That, man, maybe I've been manipulated a little bit about these TV things that I've been seeing online, and it truly didn't happen the way I thought it happened. And it's like,
Yeah, and I want our audience to know too that when I met Sheriff Bianco this morning after these opening ceremonies at this conference, I thought you were aware that I wanted to interview you. And you weren't.
No.
And he doesn't know me. He doesn't know about the narcos. He didn't know about. He does now because we talked a little bit. But he didn't know who I was, other than I'm a retired police officer coming to ask him for an interview. And he didn't hesitate. Now, the problem was, before we could get off that stage, the lines were going out the auditorium, because this is one of the smaller conferences, this annual conference I come to, but there's still 700 cops here. And they're lining up wanting to take pictures for him. Cops don't do that. And I told you coming back here, if you've earned the respect of those people, far be it from me to interfere, because they want their 15 seconds with you to take a picture of somebody that they respect, somebody that they're going to support to represent them here in the state of California. So when he's saying that he trusts people until you give him a reason not to trust you, he proved it to me this morning. So, and just one final question here for you, and I'll let you go. And I got to thank you so much for giving me so much time this morning. But if you get elected governor or you don't get elected governor, what is in store for Chad Bianco in life after law enforcement, life after public service?
Wow, I haven't even thought about that. Well, whatever it is that I'm doing with either the sheriff or as the governor, is I'll just be a grandpa. I'll go back to being nothing but a husband and a grandpa now. I got some young grandkids that I had fantastic relationships with my grandparents, and I'm going to make sure that my grandkids have the same thing. So as much as personally I may want to do this for eternity, I do have priorities, and my priorities are going to be my grandkids when they get to a certain age that they can benefit from a grandparent being there when their mom and dad might be at work or wherever it is, and they're going to have grandpa to take care of them and teach them and spend time with them. So that's really what I'm looking forward to. My sheriff election isn't until 2028, so it's almost, I'll remain the sheriff through this whole election. I'm hoping that the voters of California do give me the opportunity to make this state great again and turn things around for businesses and for families and for employees and even visitors. I mean, it's expensive to even come here, and we can make a difference here, and I'm hoping that they give me that opportunity.
Excellent. So if people want to find out more information about Chad Bianco, where can they find you at?
Absolutely. BiancoForGovernor.com, and any of the social medias, Sheriff Bianco.
I found you on LinkedIn at Chad Bianco, so check him out there.
I forgot about that. Chad Bianco, LinkedIn, and then Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, Sheriff Chad Bianco.
Excellent. Sheriff, I can't thank you enough. The transparency that you've shown, the honesty, the integrity that you've demonstrated throughout your entire public career sets an example for others to live up to. That's what a leader's supposed to do, lead from the front. It's been a true honor to have you here on The Game of Crimes. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for your time, brother.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
And for all our listeners, guys, thank you for coming back again every week. I couldn't do this without your support. I know that. Love you to death for giving me your time to come and listen to the studs. It's not about me. It's about these guests that we bring on. But the truth is, I know why you continue to come back, because you enjoy listening and playing the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all. And what's that game? The Game of Crimes. God bless. See you next week.